Welcome to St. Paul's Free University and Recovering from Religious Trauma. We are going to be starting this morning with a panel with three experts at Recovering from Religious Trauma. We have Wendy Johnson of Wendy Johnson Life Coaching. We have Amy Elmore, and who's a Reiki practitioner. And we have Lynetta Avery, who is a soul wizard. And these people have had a lifetime of challenge by being in Jehovah's Witness in particular. But what we're going to be sharing today is going to apply to any religion that you may have been in and really committed to and been challenged by. And also any kind of trauma that you may have that you need to get cleared out of your system so you can really create the life that you want, whether that's got a new spiritual orientation or not. So we are, any business you want to share, David or Daniel, before we get started? Okay. So we're going to get started with our experts panel. And what we're going to do is we have a few questions that we've prepared for you all. And then afterwards we'll take any questions that you have about anything you want to know about religious recovery, trauma recovery. So let's get started. So Wendy, let's start with you. So how did you get into Jehovah's Witness, and how long were you involved?
When I was about 4 or 5, my mom started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And then my father started studying as well because he was raised in another religion, and he wanted to prove her wrong. And the next thing you know, here we are. We're all Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
And how long were you involved for?
I was involved until I was about 33. I was in and out from the age 18 to about 33. But I was raised from the age 5 to the age 18.
So about 20, 25 years? Great. Okay, Amy, same question.
My mom and father had converted before I was born. And I left right about when I was 20, so I was in for 20 years.
20 years. Okay, and from birth?
From birth, yes.
Great. Same question, Lynetta?
My parents started studying when I was 5 years old, and then by the time I was 18 to 29, I was in and out, and 29 years old is my final exit.
Okay, so about 25 years also. Great, thank you. Okay, what was the most negative aspect of being involved with Jehovah's Witness, and was there anything in particular that you'd say you actually felt traumatized by? Start with you, Wendy.
The most negative aspect, I think, would be a lot of the fear-based beliefs that they had. And as I became a teenager, we weren't allowed to participate in a lot of different things, as well as the different types of friends we could have, as well as be in the same place with the opposite sex without being with other people. And I found myself in a situation where I had to be on a judicial committee, they call them, where they ask you questions. And I had been alone with someone of the opposite sex, and so I ended up on a judicial committee where I had to answer very personal questions. I did some very personal questions, and that was very traumatizing. It's called an elders meeting is another term for it.
And the traumatizing aspect was that you didn't know even what they were talking about?
Yeah, they were asking me questions, so I was very naive, and I didn't know what a lot of the terms were, because they were asking me very explicit sexual questions that I had absolutely no idea, because I was very naive and I was young. I was probably 15.
And besides the fact that you were asked questions you had no idea, and you kind of felt put upon by the whole thing, there was another aspect to this that you had shared that you realized was challenging later on?
Yeah, later on I realized that I felt very unsupported by my father, whom was an elder, because he was sitting there and allowed these men to ask me very explicit questions.
So you felt totally unsupported by your family.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amy, same question?
I would say for me the most negative aspect was the most one that affected me the longest, and that was again, like Wendy said, it's a very fear-based, restrictive religion, but again and again they reiterate about a prophecy in the book of Revelation about Armageddon. Some people call it, doomsday, the apocalypse. And anytime something bad happened in the news, it was like another sign that doomsday was just around the corner. And what they expected as doomsday is that, anything that we had would be taken away. Our faith would be challenged. Maybe they would use our family to try to pressure us to give up our faith. And by giving up your faith, or, you would be... you wouldn't make it through the final tribulation, so you would die, and they don't believe in the afterlife. So when you're gone, you're gone. So that really prevented me from looking to the future with any kind of hope or planning. So that took a really long time to kind of deprogram that. So I would say that was pretty long-term traumatic experience for me.
So living in fear that the end of the world's basically right around the corner, and constantly seeing signs for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Lynetta?
A couple things come to mind. Is one, I was terrified every night about demons. I was hearing a lot about Satan and the demons and how they could attack you. Like, even if you were to buy something from a thrift store, it could be demonized. You could be listening to music that has masking that's demonized. You might have a toy that could be demonized. I heard all kinds of stories that terrified me, and I had these terrible nightmares. And my dad had a pretty hot temper at the time, and when I was scared and I'd wake up in the middle of the night terrified from a nightmare, he would make it worse and make me be quiet, and I had to go back to sleep by myself, and it terrified me even more. So I had to just bury all of that, and I kind of disassociated and thought that it was demons that was doing that to me, because it was happening in the middle of the night, and I didn't put it together until years later that was actually my dad who did that. But it was the terror of Satan, and the demons are always lurking. They're always... they rule this world. We're trained that this is Satan's world, so we're in it, and that they can attack us at any time. And that terrified me. I thought, especially in the dark, that that's when they attacked. And my little mind didn't know how to process that. And then as I grew up, I was so just yearning to be touched and loved. And a brother and I was only 17, and he touched my breast, and I was going out into field service a lot, so I shared this with some of the other brothers and sisters I was with, and before we knew it, like 8 people knew about it, and we were in a meeting, and all 8 of those people were in on the meeting, and I had to share all the details about what happened with this brother putting his hand on my breast, which ended up in a public reproof where they announced from the stage my name, and they publicly reproved me, and I was there when they announced it. And the shame at 17 years old, the guilt, the shame, wanting to just disappear in my seat. And then when I walked through the congregation, when I was leaving, everybody parted. So they just separated from me, and I could feel this being marked. And I knew it ended my chances of marrying a good brother, which all of my friends were getting married. My cousin was married at 15. My best friends were married at 16 and 17. Here I was 17, already an old maid, and there was no chance for me to get married. And I had planned all my life to get married. That was my only way out of my family, was to get my own family, and it's a dream I had all my life, was to get married. So that dream was completely dashed at 17 years old.
Wow. Thank you. And the thing you said before about the not being able to sleep at night because of the fear, both of your father and demons, which the religion kind of built it up for you.
Yeah.
How did that play out in your life?
Oh, I could not have, the only way I got peace at night is if I had somebody in bed with me. So I wasn't just getting together with guys to, to do sexual things with them. It was a matter of survival so I could sleep at night, because I literally could not sleep without a body next to me. So I never let a relationship in between there was no gap in between relationships, because I made sure I always had a backup before I'd leave the last guy. So there was a series of a lot of relationships that I went through. I counted one day 50 of them. Mm-hmm. Because I could not, and I was attracting very unhealthy, abusive relationships, alcoholics, addicts. That's part of my journey on my way out. I was rebelling, so I knew nothing else. I didn't know what else to do. I flipped between the partying and the going back to the witnesses.
Mm-hmm. And this having to have a man in bed, literally so you could sleep through the night, lasted until what age?
Well, I actually never really had in between, like there was never gaps. Even now, I'm married to you, so I just
right. But before us, you were how old before we met?
I was
49.
49, yeah, and
so
I'm 55 now, so it's been with me all my life.
Right.
Basically.
But occasionally we're not together, and you can sleep through the night alone now.
Now I can. Our relationship helped me to heal a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alrighty. Next question. What ultimately prompted you to leave, and how hard was it for you? Wendy?
For me, I had children. And I had a 7, 8-year-old son that was giving a Bible reading, which is a talk in the congregation. And after he did his Bible reading, he was getting a lot of pressure to be baptized. And I had been disfellowshipped at the age of 18 for 3 years. So I knew what it was like to lose my family and be without them. And all I could imagine was losing my kid, losing my child. And then it made me look at all my other kids and reflect on the fact that if I raise them, if I continue on the path that I'm on, that I really had already started creating doubt of the belief system, that I was going to very likely lose them at some point too. Because the likelihood of them making it through all their teenage years and not being disfellowshipped or excommunicated as a Jehovah's Witness was very unlikely. And at the same time, my marriage was really rocky. So I chose to take my children and leave my relationship as well as my religion. So I left everything behind.
Got it. Now, just so the people watching understand these concepts, can you explain a little more about baptism and what the relationship is between that and disfellowshipping, being excommunicated?
Baptism is where you make a dedication to live the rest of your life according to Jehovah. And
do you have to do this?
If you're baptized?
No. Do you have to get baptized?
No, you do not have to get baptized.
So it's an optional thing.
Well, if you want to be part of their organization, you have to be baptized.
So if you want to be with the in crowd, you need to do it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of pressure to do that.
Yes.
And then if you do that, then what could happen on the downside?
Well, if you don't follow all of their rules and all the things that they say that is, if you disapprove Jehovah, basically, you can be disfellowshipped or excommunicated.
Okay. What are grounds for that, for example?
There's a lot of different grounds. Adultery, fornication, smoking cigarettes, your association can make a difference.
Who you hang out with?
Yeah. The type of crowd that you, the type of company you keep. Alcohol. That's all that's coming to me at the moment.
Gossiping, I was told also?
Potentially.
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy to fall on the wrong side of all this.
It could be, yes.
And then if that happens, what, they call you before a
You go
group?
before a judicial committee, which is a group of 3 men,
Mm-hmm.
and they, well, they, as it's put, they, with God's Holy Spirit, make a decision as to whether you can stay in or you have to be punished, basically.
Uh-huh. And if you have to be punished, what happens?
You're disfellowshipped.
Yeah,
So that looks like
Mhm.
you are no longer allowed to speak. Nobody in the congregation in that organization is allowed to speak to you, whether they're family, blood, it doesn't matter.
Literally can't speak to you?
They literally are not supposed to speak to you.
So, like, if you see them in
You're
the
like dead
supermarket, like,
them.
they turn the other way?
Yes, I had many people run the other way. They looked at me and were like, and would just dash off the other way.
So you lose family, you lose friends, like, everything
Yes.
is just, like, totally cut off.
Yes, they're totally cut off from everyone.
Mm-hmm. So your decision to leave then was you didn't want your son to get baptized because if he fell on the wrong side, then he could experience this agony, or you would not be able to be with him.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Amy, same question.
So for me, one thing Jehovah's Witnesses have rules as far as dating is you're not allowed to date without the you can court. Yeah, you have to have a chaperone. But also, if you're dating, then you're basically getting married because there is no just casual dating or boyfriend, girlfriend. It's, you're engaged. You have to get married if you're seeing someone.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can't be alone. Like she said, you have to have a chaperone. And so that really prompted a lot of young ones to get married way too early and too quick. And that happened to me. I married someone that I was not compatible with. We were too young.
How old were you?
I was 17 when I got married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, barely, like a day turning 17, so I was barely 17 when I got married. And also they discourage you to go to counseling outside the religion. And the problem is within the religion, the ministers, they're lay ministers. And so they don't have any really experience professionally. So there's not a lot of really good resources to help you if you have any kind of problems. So, our marriage was falling apart, and there was no resources. There's just the pressure to stick it out, go to meetings, read the Bible if you want to fix your marriage. That just wasn't going to work for us. So, and I got just a really dark place because I felt like I was failing my family, my religion, and my marriage. And it just got me into a really dark, suicidal space. And I had to decide, either I was going to just, continue down this road and eventually commit suicide, or I was going to have to leave and survive and raise my daughter. So when I left, I kind of had to leave everything behind because most of my family were witnesses. All of my friends, because you can't associate outside your religion, so all your friends are witnesses. So I left a lot of, really good, long, lifetime friends behind. So it was pretty difficult.
So you had to leave the religion because you couldn't get divorced within the context of the religion.
Right. You have to have grounds, and the only grounds for divorce is infidelity. If your spouse is unfaithful, you have grounds. But even then, it's highly discouraged, and, you kind of look down upon.
So you lost everybody also.
Yeah.
Lifelong, since you, from birth, were in.
Yeah, we couldn't really associate anymore, so I couldn't call them up. I didn't have support.
Mm-hmm.
So after I decided to leave my marriage, yeah. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lynetta. Mm-hmm. What prompted you to leave, and how hard was it?
Well, by the time I was 17, I was already on public reproof, like I said, and I was also very determined to get married. So I saw my only way to do that was I met somebody who was also who was disfellowshipped, and he liked me, and my hopes were that we'd get married and then come back to the meetings. And he only went to a few meetings, and then he told me he had no desire to come back. And then I find out that he's violent. He did not express his emotions. We were living on my parents' property, so I was actually still under my parents' wings. And I wasn't working, and I didn't have an education beyond high school. I just got my GED. So the only thing I could do, and my husband didn't want me to work. So I felt very trapped. And I remember getting very depressed because I thought getting married was the answer. I thought that once I was married, my life would be happy. I would be free of my parents, and that would bring great joy to my life. But my husband was even more challenging than my family was. So he started getting violent to where it was apparent he was going to start hitting me, and I would not allow that, so I left. But at that point, I had nowhere to go but home, back to my mom and dad's, and if I went back home to mom and dad's, I had to go back to the meetings. So I played this game of going back and forth, and when I'd leave, it was partying, and it ended up homeless, and then back to my parents and doing the Jehovah's Witness thing. So that's why I flipped from 18 to 29, back and forth, back and forth. I knew nothing else. To me, there was only those two worlds. There was no other options. But then I started seeing a therapist, and I started like around, I'd say I was around 19 when I really started to check out 12-step recovery programs, and AA and NA helped me get clean and sober. And then I found out I was really codependent, so I went to codependency 12-step meetings and Al-Anon, and they helped me get a sponsor, and a sponsor works closely with you to help you go through the 12 steps. And that really gave me a whole new world. For the first time, I heard that I could actually borrow my sponsor's God until I got one of my own, which I'd never even considered that was a possibility until then. So that got me started on trying something new, and it gave me hope that I could get out and have support from everybody in the program.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Wendy, same question. When you left, how difficult was it to create a new life, and what were your first steps?
Well, when I left, I did own an in-home family child care, so I was financially okay.
Now, you were fortunate because from what I understand, especially for women,
Yes.
there is zero financial training. Like,
Yes.
you're not encouraged to work, you're not encouraged to get an education. So if
Right.
you leave, you've got no financial resources to support yourself.
That is
So you were kind of the exception.
I was kind of the exception, which I really didn't have an education. I also dropped out of high school, and I didn't go to college. I just figured out how to survive, and
you did.
found it very important to be able to support my kids and be a stay-at-home mom. And I could see that if I wanted to support my kids at the level that I was accustomed to, that I was going to have to figure out a way to do that. So that's when I opened a child care, and I was looked down upon for working as
While
much
you
as
were
I
in.
did. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so financially you were covered. So what other aspects did you have to deal with when you got out?
Just my kids, I was divorced, so my kids were seeing their father on the weekends. So I had a lot of time on the weekends by myself, and it was just me by myself. And a lot like Lynetta, I turned to men to fill that void. I didn't know what else there was. That and alcohol, and so I would go out and party on the weekends because I had nothing else. I had no friends. I had no other way of knowing how to cope.
So you just lived the high life, so to speak.
Yes.
And I hear you had a nickname as the Dancing Queen or something along those lines.
Something along those lines.
Maybe on another video we'll get a little demo.
Maybe not.
Okay.
That was some years ago.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. So same question, Amy. What were your first steps in creating a new life, and how difficult was it?
So I went from an environment where it was very restricted and controlled, being told, who you can hang out with and be friends and marry and what was right and wrong. And it was very, very constrictive and controlling. So when I left, I didn't have anybody really telling me and guiding me. So I basically looked to others to do that. And, I didn't have, that moral compass anymore of fear and shame to guide it. So yeah, like a lot of young teens and early 20 kids that leave, you do kind of go wild. Because like Lynetta said, there's the witness world and there's the worldly world where everybody doesn't have morals and they're wild. And so yeah, I look to others to tell me what to do. So I really I wasn't empowered. I was powerless. So I let other people control me once again. But what helped me kind of get my life on track was just over the years, just keep picking up any kind of self-improvement, self-help book I could find. Eventually, like Lynetta, I attended Codependency Anonymous, which then opened my eyes that there was a control issue. And so I began to take my personal power back, and that helped tremendously, knowing that my life was my journey and not to be ashamed of any mistakes that I made, that we're human and it's okay to make mistakes and to be forgiving of yourself and loving of yourself and others. And so that helped a lot. And counseling, seeing a counselor really helped too as well. So.
And Wendy, you also had some self-help resources that you stumbled across?
Yes. I was very angry, very angry. And I was in a Goodwill one day, and there was a cassette tape on anger. And I decided to purchase that. And that really helped me see how I was giving my power away to the elders by being angry with them. And that helped me to actually just, once I realized I was still giving them my power, that was the last thing I wanted. That was the end of that.
Got it. Thank you. And anything you want to add, Lynetta? You shared some of your steps already. Anything more you want to?
Yeah, I started trying other things too. I went to the metaphysical bookstore and I found it so peaceful. And I would tune into, is it peaceful? Is it joyful? Do I feel good? And instead of, when I'd go to the Kingdom Hall, it felt very, I noticed people were robotic. They weren't feeling, they were like the Stepford wives, if you've ever seen. Like they were totally programmed, and you can tell it. There was no genuine life force energy moving through their bodies. They were just rotely doing everything. So I looked at other people that were like alive and that, were like vibrant and they were joyful. And to me, that was one of the scriptures that I always listened to, was about, look at the fruits of the tree. If the fruits are good, those are my people. If the fruits are rotten, those are not my people. So I looked at the fruits of the witnesses and saw that they were doing a lot of things, living two lives. And so when I started going to, I went to a powwow in the Indians, and they were just they brought me back to nature. They taught me things that really worked and that felt joyful to me, and connecting with Mama Earth and Father Sky, and I just felt a real resonance. My whole body kind of sang and just felt joyful being with them. And I tried on the Law of Attraction, and that really drew me in. And then I went to Center for Spiritual Living, and that felt really good. It's all very all-inclusive. Anywhere where I found it's all-inclusive, where nobody is left out. It doesn't matter if you're whatever you believe, you're welcome here. That was the place where I wanted to be. And if I heard anything that was where they shun you or put you aside, it's like that was a red flag. If they do any judgment, exclusion, then I wouldn't go to that. So I really got the key to my power was my power to choose. My choice to live my life the way I choose to live it and not buy into the shame, guilt of my childhood raising.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last and most important question before we take questions from our audience is, what is your advice today to someone who's recovering from either religious trauma or trauma in general? So why don't we start with Lynetta on this one?
Oh. So what I would say is, and I brought something to demo it. I was going to bring that closer here. So imagine that you're in a belief and you're raised this way that you can only wear blue, navy blue polyester uniforms. That's all you're allowed to wear. You can't wear anything else. Anything else is, you'll be destroyed at, Mamageddon. But you look at other people and you notice that people that are wearing different colors, different fabrics like cotton and, like lace and velvet, they're like really happy and they seem to be really comfortable in those clothes, and you get really curious and you want to try those on, and you start to get that you do have the power of choice, that you do have free will, and you were given that for a reason. So you begin to try on different fabrics, and maybe you try on a self-help book at a bookstore. Maybe you find a counselor or a therapist, and you go to a therapist and try that on. Maybe you get to pick your own instead of me picking.
Wow.
Right? And you get to try one on, and you get to try one on, and we all get to try something on.
I like this.
And you get to try something on. And we all try on something new, something we've never tried before, like going to a meetup and hiking with new people, or going biking, or finding a Facebook group like Empowered Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, which is an amazing supportive group on Facebook that can really help you to exit and thrive in your life. There's a million things you could try. I went to different churches just to try them on. They didn't work for me, but it's something you can try. It's really getting that the most amazing superpower that you have is your ability to choose for yourself. And when we're witnesses raised that way, we're so indoctrinated, and the conditioning is so deep that it's in the subconscious to not try anything, to only do what you're told, and just wait until the system is over and not live your life. But once you start to get that there is a life beyond that life, and that you do have choices, and you were given free will to choose, which is the most amazing gift that we were given. And if we start choosing what feels good to us and say, yes, I'll accept this into my life, but no, this doesn't feel good. And get really good at that. Like life is a buffet table. You get to choose, yes, this is yummy, this is yummy, this is yummy, no to that, no to that, no to that, and keep going until you find that you've incorporated all the things from all these different choices that creates an amazing, alive, vibrant life for you. One that's it's your design, completely by your design, not somebody else dictating to you how you're supposed to live, which is what we were so used to. And you'll get over the fear as you keep trying on new things. You'll overcome your fear because you'll come alive. And you'll actually, it's like breaking through a glass ceiling. You'll break through it, and then you'll be in a whole new reality. You'll get that this world is not wicked, that it's not as evil as you were taught, that there's a lot of good, and you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. So that's my gift to you today. And I also offer you a 30-minute discovery session with me to see if you want to go further with me into having a powerful life where you take back your power and you get your free will and your choice. So get a hold of me through markandlynetta.com on our website. And when you put in your email and all that, you can put in comments you're interested in the 30-minute discovery session. And that's my offering.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Amy, what would your advice be?
To definitely be gentle with yourself, because you're coming from such a very dogmatic, restrictive religion. You should definitely be gentle with yourself, forgiving, practice self-love and self-care, and find your tribe. Definitely reach out to those who are in the same position you are, that have left the same religion you are. That's really important. Yeah.
So get support.
Yeah, get support.
Get support. Great. Thank you. And Wendy, I know you're going to be speaking more at noon with some more details, but what would you like to share right here?
Don't do it alone. There's lots of support out there, whether you seek therapy, whether you seek coaching, whether you do a 12-step program or Codependence Anonymous, whatever you have to do to go out and find a new tribe, don't do it alone.
Great. And can you just make a distinction now, I know you'll develop it more later, between something like therapy and something like coaching? What's the difference?
Coaches ask you a lot of questions to turn within because all your answers are really inside yourself.
Mm-hmm. And therapists?
They help you unravel any trauma that you maybe want to go back and rediscover.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.